We are coming live here in Durban. As you know that the SADC Heads of State and Government meeting has just concluded. It was late last night actually when the meeting came to an end, and a lot was discussed by leaders of the region. Quite an important one at a very difficult time around the world when you look at the global economy issues such as industrialization, beneficiation, including migration, in relation to the speech of President Cyril Ramaphosa when he was closing the summit. Fortunately, we are going to be in conversation with the President of Botswana, Advocate Duma Boko, as you know him, where he's going to give us a sense based on Botswana whether this gathering was fruitful. Mr. President, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's start with the summit itself. How important was this summit at this moment?
Extremely important. Important because it is a Southern African development community. Important because the Southern African development community has had an agenda of industrialization and regional integration from as far back as 2015 when that agenda was crafted. And the challenge of always is the implementation of whatever agenda, whatever plans. One of the biggest downfalls is the tendency to try and go it alone, to believe that you can, in isolation of the rest of your neighbors, achieve anything. We've come to a realization, and we are now giving effect to it, that we must go wherever we are going together. We must look at the comparative advantages of each of these countries and support each country to realize the very best that it can offer the region, and we work together, we collaborate, and that's what this was about. In the area of industrialization, for instance, we've determined that we must open up trade corridors and channels between these states. We've appreciated that if you take Lesotho, there's a lot of water. There's water scarcity in some of our countries like Botswana, and we are working on bringing water over a 700-kilometer stretch into Botswana through South Africa. Mm-hmm. And so we have that project that we are operationalizing. The Trans-Kalahari that connects Botswana and Namibia to the port is also another very critical mega project that will start soon. We have Mamabula Lephalale between Botswana and South Africa. We have Mosetsi Kazumbula Livingston between Botswana and Zambia, all the way to the DRC. And so we are opening up corridors. It is important to open these corridors because under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we've understood that intra-Africa trade is by volume very, very low. Africa has tended to want to trade with Europe, with the Americas, with Asia, and Africa has not utilized the immense opportunity for intra-Africa trade. And when we talk intra-Africa trade, we're looking at a population of about 1.5 billion. Very young, very dynamic, very skilled, very healthy, and very hungry for success. And so we don't need to go too far. We have it within our shores to make ourselves the very best. So we are now pursuing actively an approach in terms of which Africa will cease to be the supermarket of the world, as Professor Adesina has said, but become its own factory. That's what we are pursuing.
Mr. President, when you look at all these grand ideas, when you follow what's being said online and social media, ordinary people, some of them, not all of them, are saying we are tired of these grand ideas. For example, this issue of industrialization and corridors, it has been a talk for a number of years with different leaders. For example, the Inga Dam project. I don't know how long this topic and discussions have been out there, but even to date we haven't seen any progress in terms of the Inga, and there's a view that Inga project with hydro, it can actually electrify the whole continent, and to industrialize you need energy.
You know, the most dangerous thing would be if there were no ideas. At least we are starting from the vantage point of ideas being there. It would be extremely dangerous if there was absolutely nothing and we were groping in pitch black darkness. We have ideas, we've had them, and these ideas actually are not self-executing. You don't just have an idea and the idea runs and operationalizes itself. It takes people, it takes institutions to realize the idea. It takes, above all, skill, expertise, and finance. And finance.
Do we have the skills?
We have some of the skills. Where we don't, we need to be able to reach out to the world. The skills are available in abundance across the world, except they come at a cost. So we need to be able to afford those skills that we don't have, and to be able to harness the skills we have and deploy them productively in these projects. So what needs to happen now is the ideas are there. The ideas have been examined, and some of these ideas, if you take the project Lesotho, South Africa, Botswana, when the Prime Minister of Lesotho and I tried to force that project must start within a very short period of time, we were told it can't, because there's an environmental impact assessment that must run through all the 4 seasons in order to model what happens when it's cold, what happens when it's hot, what happens when it's autumn, spring. They need to run these models through in real life, real time, and it takes time. So in a lot of instances, it is not because nothing is being done. It is because there are certain necessary stages, phases, processes that must take place. The second is, in order to get finance, you've got to have bankable feasibility. What does bankable feasibility mean? It means you have to have studied, to have modeled, to demonstrate to potential investors that this is a bankable project.
And you'll be able to pay back.
That you'll be able to pay back. That whoever invests in it will get a return or some quantum on their investment. And so the ordinary people sometimes, and the social media commentators, mostly are ignorant of these, or are oblivious, or some are just impatient and they don't take the time to inform themselves what is it that must happen for this project to be realized. But of course, in the same vein, we must acknowledge that there has been dilatoriness, there have been undue delays, there has been too much bureaucracy, there has been a lot of complicated process that could have been simplified, and that's what we need to do now, to remove all the bottlenecks. And between Botswana and Namibia, in relation to the Trans-Kalahari rail line, the President of Namibia and I have sat and agreed, and now we've put our ministries, our government officials under strict timelines. We want this project to start, and we are removing every obstacle, every bottleneck at the highest level. And coming together as heads of state enables us to engage closely, to understand what the challenges, peculiarities in each country are, and how we can together get around these. And we've achieved this with Zambia in relation to the Kazungula border. We're achieving it with Namibia. We achieved it in relation to the Manuno border, where people now can move freely and goods can pass. But what we also need is robust digital infrastructure. When I was in Mozambique, they have deployed technology which tracks a truck from loading through all the processes, and they showed me that on the Mozambican side, this truck will take exactly 7 minutes to be cleared and to be through.
At customs.
At customs. Then it goes to the other side. On the South African side, it will take anything from 7 to 14 days. Why? Because there's no technology. So when you have technology on one side, it doesn't immediately solve the problem, because then you must have technology on the other side so that there's interoperability and communication between these two technologies. And that's what we now must do. And we can only achieve this if Mozambique and South Africa come together, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, all of us, and ultimately we're able to have a kind of technology that makes it seamless to transport goods and persons across our borders. That's what we're doing.
Mr. President, when you talk about industrialization, let's move to mineral resources that we have as a country, particularly the rare earth minerals. We saw what happened during the first industrial revolution. You know, extraction and people taking dust and raw material. We were left with nothing. That is why today they are rich. Industrialization translates into manufacturing of products for better returns on the continent, in the region, beneficiation.
Happily in that area as well, the ideas are there and they've always been there. So it is not for a lack of ideas that things are not happening. Things are not happening because the very structure of our economies has been reliant on extraction and export of raw material. All the foreign direct investment we've attracted has been raw material or resource-seeking foreign direct investment. Now, because the economies are so dependent on these resources, and many of the economies are also monosectoral. In other words, they rely on just that one commodity or that one sector. If you disrupt, you stop that sector, if you paused, you press pause, the whole economy would tank. So you now must wrestle with the reality of keeping the economy ticking while at the same time seeking to rebuild, diversify, and move away from carting ore in the raw, and ensuring that while you, to sustain the economy in the short term, are still exporting raw, you are building the kind of infrastructure that will now enable you to process in country and manufacture in country. Now when you get to the manufacturing space as well, what do you face there? When you manufacture, you must manufacture on some idea as well, on some intellectual property. Because of the way our economies have been structured, we have not invested either sufficiently or at all in research, development, registration of patents, having prototypes that can be scaled and taken to market. We have not done this. So we now must start almost from ground zero to do this, because the best placed is not the manufacturer as such, the one who does the physical manufacturing. It is the person who holds the intellectual property, the patent. So the patent holder determines. If you're manufacturing BMW in South Africa, it's not your product, it's not your patent, it's German. So you must rent or pay for that intellectual property to be availed to you, and then you can manufacture. Are you able to yourself introduce any product into the market that is decidedly yours. Its provenance is here. That's something that we need to start looking at. And where we still have to rely on their intellectual property because they've invested heavily, there are many years ahead of us. We need now to be able to have a conversation that draws them into the country to say, you must property, you must bring it here and manufacture from here. And so this is what the African continent increasingly is doing. So the talk about beneficiation, if you look at Zimbabwe, some countries have taken an approach that's basically cold turkey. No more export of raw lithium.
That's Zimbabwe.
That's Zimbabwe, and there are many others, I mean, if you take Burkina Faso. But that also comes at a huge risk. And the risk is this: the very same people that are saying we want beneficiation, we want manufacturing in our country, when you stop and in the short to medium term, the economy is adversely affected because you have to start building.
You must take the shock.
Then they are the same people who will now rise against you. So you need to deal with these sentiments and understand what it is that you can do, what amount of play at the joints you have while you try and build, and it takes time. And that's what all of us are doing. Now, if you take Botswana is now the hub for SADC in relation to e-mobility, because it is several years ahead of the others, and they have all said, we don't want to compete with Botswana in this space. We will support, and whatever we ourselves can do, maybe manufacture some harnesses for electric vehicles, we will do that, and we will collaborate with Botswana. And each of the countries will do that which it is best placed to deliver for the region, and others will support. And this is what regional integration and industrialization together as a region means for all of us.
You touched on Burkina Faso. You have a very strong view on leadership as it comes to implementation and taking bold decisions. Do you think Burkina Faso is a role model, the leadership?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that when the leader done, things get done. And happily and hopefully, these things are in the best interest of the country. Now, if I wake up and took the approach of Burkina Faso and said, this must be done, it's going to be all sorts of challenges. No, this is not undemocratic, this is this, this is that. So we navigate different spaces. And that is why if you look at the United Arab Emirates and some of these monarchies outside of Africa, they're doing very well, because the leadership there doesn't think in 5-year blocks. In the next 5 years I must go for an election. They think in 50 to 100-year blocks and say this country must look like this, and they have all the time to invest in ensuring that things happen. Some of the things that we have to do now, the benefits are not going to come today. They will come long after my tenure, and we must do them still.
The issue of migration, Ethoniwan, I know it wasn't on the agenda of the summit.
Well, it was. We got a briefing on it.
I know President Ramaphosa indicated that he did take you into confidence or gave a briefing. From Botswana's perspective, South Africa has seen a situation where some citizens have said enough is enough. Those undocumented foreign nationals must go because we are feeling the pressure. As leadership, in your discussions, what were the views and how do we resolve this?
Well, this is not necessarily a South African problem. It is a regional, it's a continental, it's a world problem. When you have economies structured the way our African economies are, very unequal, and South Africa, Botswana, Namibia have the most unequal economies arguably in the whole world. The implication of this is that the majority of the people subsist in the underbelly of the economy, outside the mainstream of economic activity. They therefore are, if you want to put it starkly, are catching hell. They are impatient. They want answers not today, yesterday. They don't know what the answers are, but they want to eat, they want jobs, they want a decent standard of living. And so they tend to want to find somebody to blame. They look to the government and they feel that the government either has not done anything or has not done enough to regulate entry into the country and ensure that those who come in are identified, they are documented, and they can be tracked, and it is known where they are, what they are doing here. Now, when that system, that arrangement seems to have collapsed or not worked, the people in their impatience, they're not as analytical and or relaxed as others might be in different circumstances. They react and it leads to vigilantism, which is what we saw. They are responding to real, genuine problems, but responding in a manner that is not the best. So it is important for society, the society in South Africa, the civil society, everybody, to take a look at the structure of the economy, what interventions can be undertaken to empower those at the margins of the economy and help them. Now, a lot of the jobs that these foreigners come and do are jobs that are either not wanted by the locals, or the employers use the fact of the presence of these migrant laborers to pay very low wages. So they are exploited and in turn cause the citizen employee to face a graver level of exploitation. But that situation would still apply where there is unemployment. Unemployment, even if it weren't of migrants, where there's massive unemployment, there's a huge army of unemployed. Those who are in their jobs can be fired, and you fire them through this door and another one enters through the other door and is willing to take less in terms of pay. So the employer then is able to exploit, and you have a revolving door. You come in, you work. If now your salary is too high, they kick you out, bring somebody who will do this job because it doesn't require any skill anyway. So the issue of unemployment creates or contributes to the crisis of migration and exploitation as we see it. So it's important for these initiatives that we are engaging as the sub-region, as SADC, will ensure that there is economic activity in Zimbabwe, there's economic activity in Malawi, there's economic activity in Angola, in Mozambique, in Botswana, in South Africa. And jobs are then created, and the people will get employed, and they will earn decent salaries. And so all these complaints, which are about livelihoods, will then be addressed. But it's something that we must work on.
Is there a sense of agency from the leadership?
Absolutely.
Having done an analysis as good as the one that we've done, is there a political will?
Yes, absolutely. Well, there is political will. It's when you have people now taking things into their hands, if the political will was not there, certainly it has been generated. So there is. It's a question of implementation. How do we translate this political will into tangible outcomes in jobs, in improved livelihoods, in infrastructure? And that is why we must connect the region so that goods manufactured, when you manufacture, you need a market. Where's the market? The market for South African products is Botswana, it's Zimbabwe, it's all these countries. So the product and produce from each country must find its way to where it is needed and will be utilized. So we need these corridors that connect. Surface transportation, roads, rail, air transportation. We need infrastructure that connects us. And then when it comes to energy, you are talking about the Inga Dam. You build the Inga Dam, you generate massive quantities of electricity. What do you do with it? Because you need transmission infrastructure. You need interconnectors. When you don't have those, and you pump your investment into the power generation space, then you create an even bigger problem, because you will have too much power that you may actually have to pay people to take the power, because otherwise you have to put it on the ground and throw it away, and that's money. So these are the issues. All these connect. So the power generation, transmission infrastructure, interconnectors, and then what else? There has to be a platform where power is traded, so that if a producer in Tanzania has excess, they're able to put it into this platform, and somebody will say, no, I need 100 kilowatts or megawatts from you. Says, I have, and they take, and it can reach them. And what is involved there? The cost of transmission, wheeling. So we need to have a framework harmonized, where the trade in every commodity is efficient, it is seamless, and then we need to be able to trade in a manner that is direct. Now you have to go to Chase Manhattan in New York as the bank.
Yes.
That will then
Paying system.
pay because you are connected to this world economy. We need to create platforms where we can trade ourselves, and it reduces transaction costs. It makes trading cheaper, easier, more efficient. This is what we must do, and this takes some doing. And when you have certain parts of Africa like the DRC, the Eastern DRC, where there's fighting, there's Ebola, which cannot be addressed effectively because of the situation of lack of safety, the humanitarian problem. It compounds the already existing problems. So while we are dealing with these issues of infrastructure, issues of connectivity, of interlinkages, we must also be dealing with issues of peace and security in the
That's
region.
a critical one.
Yes.
Madagascar was here.
Yes.
It was a coup. How did it happen that he must be in the room? 2, the DRC, the president was not here.
Yeah.
How do you resolve DRC when a leader is not participating in the region?
Well, DRC participated.
And then
sometimes
lastly, I think Cabo Delgado is much better.
Yes. Well, Madagascar, you see, when people face challenges in their everyday lives, ordinary people, everyday people, they will do what comes almost instinctively. They will protest, and there will be civil strife. What then happens? The country will collapse. And in the case of Madagascar, as in any other case where there's no structure, when you have a democratic system or some system at all where the people are organized, there's a leadership, there's a structure, when this system collapses, this one may come in and... But where it's a leaderless revolution, as it were, it's very risky. So what happened in Madagascar? The army at some point associated itself with the protesters. The then president dissolved Parliament impeached him, and then the matter went all the way to the High Constitutional Court of Madagascar, and they resolved it in the manner that the matter was resolved, and at least some leadership was installed. Now, as the SADC region, what do we do? Do we ostracize Madagascar and say, well, we don't understand how you changed government, so we're not going to deal with you, and the crisis may actually get worse? Or we come in and we say, whatever happened has happened. Can we mediate and bring you back to a democratic dispensation? That's the route that SADC took, and that's the route that Madagascar has also submitted to. And so Madagascar is undergoing a process overseen, regulated by SADC, in terms of which they've been given 24 months. They will then return to democracy, hopefully. And this is what we must understand. We cannot sit here and dictate to the people of any country what they must do. When they get angry, they'll do what they feel like doing. And we'll have to deal with it. And we are trying to deal with it by making sure we appreciate there were challenges, and we now come in and say, whenever there are these challenges, let's put in place credible, durable structures and institutions that will help when problems like these arise in future. And that's what...
The last two questions, before we move to wrap your message, in relation to being halfway your term. You are very close to President Hichilema. Elections are over.
Yes.
Did you monitor the situation?
Yes,
SADC?
Yes, we did. We deployed a whole team. We have former President Masisi in Zambia monitoring and leading the election observation mission. And on the results as they have come out, President Hakainde Hichilema has won. We congratulate him. We congratulate the people of Zambia for having run their elections and reconstituted their government. We look forward to working with Zambia, and it's their decision, their democratic election, and we celebrate with
them. To Botswana, halfway term, how far? Just a summary, and where to from here?
To the people of Botswana, it's been a very difficult period of the last 2 years. We came in against the background where at some point the coffers of the country, the government account, had upwards of 35 billion pula. When we came in November of 2024, that government account was sitting at 300 million, and the recurrent budget of salaries and immediate expenditure on the part of government, 1.4 billion every month. That's an existential crisis. That's life-threatening. People want to be paid. They are working, and you need to keep them in their jobs. You need to ensure that they get paid, because otherwise their lives will collapse. So we had to make sure that we kept the country afloat, and we did that. We also inherited a large debt, or unpaid invoices from as far back as 2018. And we've paid now up to well over 3.7 billion. So we've cleared all those. And the reason it hasn't been immediately apparent that there's a change is because the dial won't move, because you keep having to fill up holes that were there. We've filled up most of these holes. Now the economy is beginning to pick up, and we believe that this uptick on the economy will continue. It will actually become better. There are a number of mega projects lined up that will create tens of thousands of jobs, and we can assure our people that we are on course. And as I said to them, the country will be spectacularly different in 3 years. We are now almost at 2 years. We are still on track for that undertaking.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, for your time. Let's hope we'll find time again to reflect in detail in terms of Botswana itself.
Yes, I think Botswana will be an amazing success. But Southern Africa will also be an amazing success, and it will power an Africa that will shock the world. I have no doubt in my mind.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. That was the President of Botswana, President Duma Boko. You know that SADC is one of the very stable regions, but also when you look at how it functions, SADC itself, as it has moved from being more of a group of countries who are sympathizing amongst themselves in terms of the liberation at that time, it is now focusing on development. This is a community that wants development, and understandably so. Back to you in studio.